I totally got fired.
This is Good Outcomes with Dr. Dave. Welcome to our Clinician's Corner segment where I reveal how we get good outcomes in our successful PT practice. And I'm your host, Dr. Dave. Let's get started. So towards the end of 2019, Medicare came out and said, hey, we're going to be reducing rates for reimbursement for home health. And so it's mostly Medicare that we deal with, and it's called PDGM. And so essentially what they did is they took what we were normally getting paid, per session, and they actually made it more of a lump sum. So it looks something like this. You have a little old lady goes to the hospital, comes home, needs home health. Going to home health, physical therapy or nursing is a lot cheaper than staying in the hospital. So let's do that. Okay, so now that we're that makes a lot of sense. Patients are happier, reduces risks for lots of good things. So getting people out of the hospital, really, really good. But then what ends up happening is that we as home health companies are going out and saying, well, they need 30 visits for nursing and OT and PT, and they're just piling on. And so Medicare comes out and says, hey, this is probably not working for us. You're doing way too much, right? You're having like 45 visits in the home, and this lady had like this diagnosis that's not that bad. And so it's not necessarily fraud, but it's a little more than maybe it should be. And so Medicare is trying to rein that in. I totally understand that. But then what they did is they said, well, based on certain diagnosis codes, we'll only give you a certain dollar amount. And so that's where PDGM came in. And so they say you have two diagnosis codes, a fall and a hip fracture, or you have, just a UTI. And so based on that, we're only going to give you a certain amount of money. And then it was up to the home health companies to say, how are we going to utilize that money based on the patient's needs? So a nurse goes in and a PT goes in, they say, hey, I need, 5 sessions for PT and 5 sessions for nursing. Meanwhile, really in the old model, we're only getting paid for 4. And so it's like, what do we do? And so one of the things that my company did, which by the way, publicly traded company, record profits at the time, and I looked them up, and I was bitter about this. They're like telling me I'm going to get a pay cut. And I'm like, well, what are they making? Lots of money, by the way. And so they came out and said, we're going to cut the salaries of physical therapists by 40%. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do, where you're getting paid. No one takes a 40% pay cut and is like, oh, sure, no problem. Like I can handle that, right?
How much time did they tell you in advance?
Yeah, so they told us September or October prior to it coming into, let's say, January 1st was the change.
That seems really fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so I spent that October figuring out, like, what am I going to do, right? And by the way, let me give you some context. Just bought a new house and just paid off the rest of my student loans in that mix. So we were really cash poor.
And 3 kids.
3 kids at the time. We were planning on having a 4th. All of a sudden now I've got like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because math wasn't mathing at the time, for me. So what I had to do was look at other jobs. I was thinking, well, maybe I can find a different job, right? No one is going to pay more than home health in the PT world. I was kind of at that top bracket as it was. I had a lot of experience. So, in terms of like what I was doing, I was already maxing out what I could potentially earn in Pensacola. And so I was thinking, well, instead of changing jobs, maybe I'll take a second job. I don't know what it was, but there was no one hiring at the end of 2019 for physical therapy in Pensacola. There was 0 jobs available.
Is it common for a physical therapist to have a second side hustle of any kind?
Yeah, I think a lot of PTs do second jobs.
Because of student loan?
Yeah, I think it's also, we don't make as much as people think we do. The average PT will come out of school making $70,000 to $80,000 at best. I mean, it sounds great if you don't have a degree, but then if you have $200,000 of student loans and 7 years of school to get that, you're kind of like, it's not worth it for a lot of people.
That's surprising to me. That's a surprising amount.
The big marker is like, can you get over 100? In outpatient physical therapy, rare and only later in your career. And then you can do that in nursing homes and home health relatively early in your career, depending on what's going on. California, you can make that real easy, but then the cost of living is twice as much anyway. That's all leading up to setting the stage for one of my best friends gets in a car accident, breaks his hip, dislocates his pelvis. Like, everything is all kinds of wonky for him. He's in a wheelchair, non-weight bearing for weeks, 12 weeks. And he also hurt his neck in the middle of that. So he goes to his chiropractor and he's like, oh yeah, you're going to need 3 visits a week for 12 weeks. So 36 visits. And this dead serious is what he needed for his neck, which by the way was like 5 out of 10 pain. It's not like dire. The guy's a big dude, and his wife was pregnant at the time. And he and I are in the same Bible study. He goes, like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I listened to the 36 visits. I was like, this is ridiculous. He's like, well, what would you do? I'm like, a handful. Like, meanwhile, at the time, I'm still going to old people's homes. I'm like, well, why don't I just take a lunch break, go into his home, treat him literally treated him on his bed, and treated him in 6 visits. All his neck pain was gone. He was happy. And my buddy's got no more neck pain. And so he's like, Dave, you can do this yourself. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I can't do this on my own. Like I'd have to get insurance, and, dealing with insurance companies was not really very interesting to me, especially because I knew their reimbursement rates were low. And then on top of that, it's hard to deal with. I would need a support system. I would need a biller. There's a lot of upfront costs. And he's like, no, you can go into people's homes. I'm like, I get that. I don't need a clinic, but I don't have the resources and the bandwidth to figure out how to do the insurance stuff. And it was my friend who literally did the research for me. He goes, look, people are doing it for cash. You can just charge cash. You're good enough. You can do it for cash and self-pay model. I'm like, and I thought about it. I'm like, okay. And so November is when they came in with my company. They gave me a piece of paper. I had to sign saying, sign or resign. That was in my mind what I had to do. And so the company came out and said, here's your new salary. And it doesn't matter how many visits you do or whatnot. It's like, this is the number, which again equated to a 40% reduction of my pay. And I signed it because I had nothing else better to do with my time. But during that time into November and December, I was business planning. And one of the goals I had for 2020 was to have 10 patient visits a week for myself by end of the year. It turns out I did that in like 3 weeks, so it was really good. I signed all of my paperwork for them. I, at the same time, applied for my business, LLC, got a bank account, did all the things. Right. So I started seeing my patients for the first time in February of 2020. And during that time, I was like, well, people need to know I'm good. Let's build up some Google reviews. I had some friends that wrote some, character reviews for us. Everyone starts there. That was great. But I also was still treating people on the side, but actually for my full-time job. I was asking some of my clients that, if you really like me, do you mind writing me a 5-star review? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Little ladies getting their UTIs taken care of. And, and so I would show them how to do it on their iPad. But it was technically not my patients, right? So if there was any gray area about me being fired, it's right here. I did not take anyone's clients. I didn't treat anyone in my business and steal from them. But what I did do is ask people that I knew, that knew how I was as a physical therapist, to write me a review. And I saw nothing wrong with that. My website went live maybe the end of February 2020. And then March 9th, about a week and a half later, I was marched into my boss's office and said, you're fired. They said that I was being unethical starting my own job. They actually didn't mention anything about the reviews. The way I was fired was, you're not allowed to have your own business while working for us.
Even though you didn't sign any sort of paperwork.
As a new grad PT or a young clinician, there are 2 things you need: mentorship and money. We will pay you a full salary to be mentored in our customized residency program right here, and it will actually help you fix those patients you could have helped more, and prepare you to launch your own business one day if that's something you want. Apply at our website and click Join Our Team at www.renewintegrativept.com, and we look forward to hearing from you then.
Agreeing to such.
No, there was no non-compete. There was no contract saying I couldn't have my own business. In fact, this is what grinds my gears.
You seem fired up.
I'm fired up. There was someone on staff that worked part-time for that company that owned his own practice that literally referred his home health patients to his outpatient practice from our practice.
But he didn't get.
Oh yeah, they didn't like me. This is a good part to talk about how I am a squeaky wheel. I'm not the best employee when you're bad at your job, or you're a bad leader, or if you're doing things that are unethical. If you're a good leader and you're taking care of people, I can submit to that. I'm not so alpha that I need to be in charge. For people who don't know, being in charge is hard. I'd rather not be in charge. It is difficult, right? And so if you've got someone up above you taking the hits, like whether it's in a clinic or if it's, just in your normal job, doing the hard things. I mean, if you're a CEO, your job is to fix all the hardest problems that no one else can fix. That's your job, right? If you're the boss, your job is to take care of all the other hard things. I'm perfectly fine just treating patients. That was my love. I still love it. It's hard to get me out of the clinic. It is really hard for me to submit to bad leadership. And so I was a squeaky wheel. I would be pointing out things they were doing unethically. And really it all sums together is like they were cutting out patient care because the numbers got smaller, right? It's no longer we'll get paid for however many sessions we do. It's we only get so much money, which, by the way, it's not necessarily their fault either. If the number is so small, like what are they supposed to do? Treat for free? You know what I'm saying? Like they have their costs too. They just decided to lower their costs by taking my income down by 40%.
Right. That's how they balance the books.
Yeah, that's how they needed more, right? And so, yeah, so what's interesting is I got fired on March 9th. And then a week later, if anyone knows what happened mid-March of 2020.
I mean, that was like right at it.
The whole country shut down. 2 weeks to stop the spread. That worked like a charm. That's where I was living, right? So what does a guy do after he gets fired, right? He has to call his wife. No, I called a friend first.
What? No, you didn't.
Yes, I called, his name's Jim. I called him and I said, Jim, I got fired. He goes, okay, what are you going to do about it? Right. And it's uncanny because he's like, well, you're going to have to call Beth and tell her you got fired. I'm like, yeah, I do. And so he helped me gather my emotions, right? Because I don't care who you are. Like it's easy to look back 6 years ago and be like, oh man, like it worked out real good. And honestly, getting fired was the best thing I ever did for my career. Right. But we also have to recognize that at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I was cash poor. I didn't have any money. I had literally $12,000 in my bank account. It's all I had to my name because we had just paid off my student loans. We took all of our money. And we were like, I want to get out of debt, Dave Ramsey style.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Go do it. But don't get fired afterwards.
But it does speak to the context of the emotional moment of you probably sitting in your car on the phone with Jim. And you're like, I got 3 kids, a house, a wife, and no job.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, I knew we were pregnant.
So,
no. Yeah. So I had new house, no job,
So you're trying to fix the problem even before you call Beth. You're like, don't worry, honey, I have a solution. Like you were trying to think of.
No. Well, she already knew that we were doing the whole, renew. She named it, by the way. My wife named Renew. So she knew we were doing this. But, it was one of those things where I had to gather myself. And my buddy Jim helped me do that. He put things in perspective for me. I'm a very strong believer. I knew God had me. In fact, a little aside to this is while praying about what to do and how to run this business, of a friend of mine, they were praying over me at my church. And, he's like, Dave, I'm just getting this sense that you're supposed to, quit your job. This was in February. And I'm like, no way am I doing that. I'm like, no, let me money.
You have indigestion, not the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. And so it's great because I ended up talking to that friend later on. He goes, yep, God knows what to do. And so he we joke about it that, God really wanted me to quit my job. And he's like, well, if you're not going to do it on your own accord, I'm going to kick you off the edge and I'm going to make you swim. And honestly, that's what and if you look back, that's exactly what happened. I was fired and I was like, well, there's a fire under me. Right. And I know it. I know it. If I just had the comfort of a paycheck every month, it would have been a lot different starting off. And so, for a lot of clinicians out there that are like, I don't know, what should I do? Just jump off the edge and you'll swim. So I called my wife. I was like, hey, guess what happened? I was fired. Very supportive. She was, and she really said, I have not a single worry in the world. You're going to take care of it. I know you will. And, I think that just speaks to her character. For a man to get fired, that's like that, and not have a job. I mean, that's part of our purpose is to provide for our family. And for her to be like, I'm not really worried about this. I'm like, I know the math. She doesn't know what's in her bank account. Like she'd have no idea. She doesn't do any of the bills. I do all the finances. She's like, yeah, la da da.
You're like, of course you're not worried.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So she, but she trusted me. And from that point on, I was like, okay. And what's really cool is within a month, I was full. I was maxed out. I couldn't take any more patients. A lot of that was just a lot of networking, calling friends. It's so simple. You start your business, just call like 10 people that are really good friends and say, hey, can you send 3 people to me? What do you know? Guess what? Your best friends care about you and want you to succeed.
And in the world of pain, we all know
Oh, yeah.
someone.
And it's easy to treat. Yeah, that's another thing too. The pain world, everyone's got pain, it seems like. What's also was really interesting that I didn't realize this is as I was praying about, who was I going to work with, right? That was another part of my story in October, November when I was planning for this. I was like, okay, God, who should I work with? And meanwhile, my mind is like, I want to work with runners and CrossFitters, and I like sports. Let's go find a football player and fix his knee. And I felt like the Lord said, no, I want you to treat chronic pain. And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's hard. And so praying into that, I felt, no, this is what God's calling me to do. I'm going to go do it. And so my demographic, as I was talking about what we do, I treat chronic pain. I treat people who've been through the ringer and can't find any relief. And what do you know, when you fix someone who's been in pain for 30 years, guess what? They got big mouths, right? And so when we look at my growth trajectory, that's what it was. I really focused on people who are like, I've been to everybody else. And to be able to help them and bring relief to them, it just put more fire under it. What's really interesting is, like in my story, is that back in October, I felt like God was taking care of me, because he's like, you're going to work with chronic pain. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like a really great idea to me. And then he's like, in February, he's like, you should quit your job. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a great idea to me. And then in both cases, not only am I kicked off the curb and out in the streets on my own to fend for myself, God knew who I was. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be fine. And then on top of that, he also set me up for a demographic that would really, spur the growth of Renew early on. And, it's a really, encouraging thing to see. And you carry that testimony through, and you're like, okay, over and over and over again over the last couple of years, it's the same thing. So yeah, I was fired, and it was the best career move I ever made.
If good outcomes matter to you, subscribe and follow wherever you're tuning in. If you're a new grad or a young clinician and you're frustrated with the system and its outcomes, go to renewintegrativept.com, click Join Our Team to learn more about our residency program. And remember, healing is possible.